Get here early. I get here early.
Just about. Couple of them. That's Judge Wagner. Judge there. Two judges right there.
All right. All right, thank you all for coming here. We're going to get started here pretty soon. Before we do begin, I'm going to ask Judge Wagner to come on up. She has some announcements to make before we begin.
Thanks. It's nice to be here. Nice to see you all. I just wanted to give you a little update on the ceiling for the court house. It's working its way through the county board, and last night was the Public Works Committee in front of the Finance Committee, and it went through smooth as silk. We have met the Jeffress pledge, so we're going to get that $675 from the Parker Penn family, and that goes to the ceiling. So that was a 3 or 3.5 million that we had to raise for that. So we did that. And now we're working on the Tawani fundraiser, which is the Pritzker family from Summers with the museum. They have given us a one-to-one grant for $100,000. So we still need you to pitch in, some of you who have not, and we'd appreciate that, but it's looking very, very fine as far as the county board. There are no snags developing, and it looks like they will start construction this winter, and we'll have, hopefully for the 25 celebration of the 100 years of the county board, of the courthouse, have a nice new ceiling, and it'll look beautiful. So thanks for all your help, for all your encouragement, and for all your support. We really appreciate it. And the checks go to the foundation, Kenosha Community Foundation. I hate to quit. We were talking about the mock trial, which is held each spring. No, it's fall. It's fall. And we need more volunteers for that next fall. You're not doing it this spring, are you?
No, we will not.
Okay, so when that letter and plea goes out, please help with that, because it's really wonderful for the students to have that opportunity. It's good for you too. Thanks.
Thank you, Judge Wagner. All right, my name is Andrew Weir, and I have the honor of serving as the president of the Kenosha Bar Association this year. And I just want to thank, first of all, Hondo and Casa Capri for putting up this event. He, as I said before, for the March event, he couldn't have agreed faster when I reached out to do an event such as this. And so I think this is a third or fourth forum we've held here at Casa Capri. And so give Hondo your thanks, and go over to some drinks and have a good time here. So thanks, Hondo. I also want to thank the other members of the Bar Association this year. So there's President-elect Kelly Lipon, who will be helping me with the time cards. We have the past president and the treasurer, David Hughes. We have Secretary Deborah Zeravoy, and then at-large members, Andrew Tenuta, Ben Anderson, and Zachary Brose are all directors at large, and they've been helpful in getting this event together. We have a few announcements by way of the bar. We are hosting an ethics CLE Thursday, October 31st in the jury assembly room. Lunch will be provided to the members of the bar, and so come on out there. I think Tim Pierce will be giving a talk. Kelly has the title Kelly, remind me of the title. Confidentiality Online, all right. So come on out, get a CLE credit on the bar. We do have an update also on Judge Schrader's portrait. And so as some of you know, one of the members, or one of the purposes of the Bar Association is to commission these portraits to honor the judges who have retired. And so Judge Schrader's portrait is ready. We believe we're going to be hopefully doing an unveiling in November or December. We'll be in touch with Judge Schrader, and so just follow that listserv. If you're not on the listserv, please reach out to me or David Hughes, and we'll get you on that listserv to get the announcements about Judge Schrader's portrait unveiling. I've been told I haven't seen it myself, but I've been told it's pretty good. So I'm excited to see that. And so we will be doing a portrait unveiling. We also have a holiday party and elections coming up for next year. And so if you have an interest in serving on the Bar Association Executive Board, it's a lot of fun, as you can see by the things this week. And so come on out and join us. And we'd love to have you. So one of the purposes in the history of the Kenosha County Bar Association is to foster events such as this, to host CLE events, to foster the collegiality amongst the members of the bar, and to fundraise and commission the portraits to honor the retiring judges. And historically and traditionally, one of the things that we have done over the last 5 or 10 years is host these question and answer sessions for candidates for the contested elections. It's a long-standing tradition, and it has allowed the members of the Bar Association to attend an event in a neutral setting and submit their questions and hear the candidates give their answers without having to attend a campaign event or make a donation. And so it has been something that has been, I think, useful and vital in the past, at least in Kenosha County, to allow us to submit these questions and vet the candidates who are seeking office in a way that will affect us all, both personally and professionally. We all have relationships in these communities, and so it's helpful to attend one of these events and see how the candidates will present their vision for the office that they seek, whether it's a judicial position or an office of district attorney. And we, as lawyers, hold influence over our friends and family when they ask us who we're supporting and who we're nominating. And so I think it's important for us to make educated decisions on who we pursue. And so that's part of why the Kenosha Bar Association has traditionally held an event such as this. We are neutral as best as we can be, so to my knowledge, none of the senior members of the Kenosha County Bar Association have endorsed any of the candidates, including me and Attorney Carli and David Hughes, as far as I'm aware. We held these events between Judge Meyer and John Anthony Ward, Judge Doug Villo and Judge Larissa Benitez Morgan, Judge Gabrielle and Angela Cunningham, and then Judge Iverson and Judge Gagliardi. And so this would be the fifth type of event. We reached out to the candidates early on to try to schedule a time for both candidates to attend. And when Attorney Solis responded, he declined to participate, and he indicated that he appreciated the invitation, but, quote, "I am respectfully declining as I am taking my message directly to the people." And so Attorney Solis won't be here tonight. Unfortunately, we've continued to extend the invitation. We've advertised it as an open invitation, hoping that maybe he would appear. But as it appears that we will just have one candidate here today. But when faced with the decision on whether to move forward with the event, the Kenosha Bar Association Board felt strongly that we didn't want to deprive the members of the Bar Association the opportunity to vet the one candidate that is willing to appear to answer the questions. And so we have some questions to ask, and we'll, of course, afford that opportunity. And if by the end of the night Attorney Solis decides to appear, we'll, of course, welcome him and offer up the same set of questions and the time to speak. So I'll be monitoring the event. The questions were submitted by the members of the bar, mostly anonymously. Carli Lipon and I are the only people who were privy to the questions. We curated them as best as we could, consolidated them into a reasonable sense of a question, and we'll get those out here pretty soon. So the format, we're going to try to keep it to about an hour or less. We'll give 4 minutes for an opening remark, about 45 minutes of questions. We'll ask that you keep the answers to about 2 minutes. And then about 5 minutes for our closing remark. We are live streaming this on the Kenosha Bar Facebook page. And so with that, I'll welcome Attorney McNeill, or ADA McNeill, Deputy District Attorney McNeill, to come and give her opening remarks.
Thank you all for being here, and I do want to thank the Bar Association as well as Hondo and Casa Capri for hosting this. I do think it's incredibly important that my fellow attorneys, as well as the public, since this event is open to the public, have an opportunity to ask me questions and to hear my answers. I think if you want to run for public office, then you should be answerable to the public. And I want to go even further back because I talked to Attorney Don Bielski, who was a member of the bar at the time of the last contested DA race, and he said that there was a forum for that prior contested DA race, which would have been about 16, 18 years ago. So this tradition goes back even further than the prior judge races. And so it is unfortunate that I'm the only one here to answer questions tonight, but I'll begin by introducing myself. I am Carli McNeill. I am the Deputy District Attorney here in Kenosha County. And I'm from Kenosha County. I was born and raised here. I went to Bristol and then went to Central High School. And then after that, I went to college at Union College in Schenectady, New York. And I ended up there because I wanted to play hockey, and that was a place where I could go play. So I spent my 4 years there, and then moved on after that to Notre Dame Law School. And then after graduating from law school, I came back home. And I have been a Kenosha County resident my entire life, other than when I was away at school. And so I had the opportunity to start at the DA's office as just, I guess, an intern, someone who just showed up there. And I worked my way up to Deputy District Attorney in 2021. And when I'm answering questions here today, what I want you to look for is the qualities that are needed in a district attorney. And I think those are two main things. You need the district attorney to be a trial lawyer, someone who can take on the most difficult, the most serious cases in the county and take them to trial successfully and competently and protect our community in that way. Kenosha County has a tradition of our DA not simply being a figurehead, but being someone who can take on those difficult cases, him or herself, and prosecute them successfully. But then the DA also needs to be a manager, because there are 20 attorneys in the DA's office and over 20 different support staff. So that's paralegals and victim witness and legal secretaries and people who help us do our job. And so the DA has management responsibility for all of those people. And so it doesn't matter if the DA is a great attorney if the DA cannot manage people. And that is something that I have been doing for over 3 years now, assisting the DA with management as the deputy DA, the second in charge of the office. So as I answer questions here today, I hope you look for those qualities as what we're looking for in the DA candidate.
All right, thank you. One of these questions is going to be closely related to your opening remarks, but the first question that we received is, tell us about your record at trial and how that relates to your qualifications for DA. Closely related, if elected, do you intend to try cases yourself? And if so, what experience do you have trying serious cases such as homicides and sexual assaults?
All right, so I absolutely intend to try cases if I become the district attorney. Again, in Kenosha County, I think that is expected of the DA, and also it's something that keeps the DA in touch with the work that the ADAs are doing. That's another thing that I intend to do, obviously to take on the serious cases and try them, but I also want to be able to know what my ADAs are doing every day, what they are experiencing, and what court looks like for them. I think a DA can't really do their job if they get out of touch with that. And so then in terms of my trial record, I think that when you look at that, percentages are not necessarily something that is very telling to an attorney, because if you're only trying these slam dunk cases and you win 80% of them, well, that's actually not very good. And if you're trying the most difficult cases, there are cases that other prosecutors either don't try or don't win, and you hover around 50%, well, that's really good. And so instead of getting into a percentage game, I think you have to look at the willingness of a prosecutor to take a case to trial, including a difficult case. Some of you in here are defense attorneys, right? And when you know that prosecutor isn't willing to try a case, you smell blood in the water, right? You know all you have to do is set that case for trial, and all of a sudden you'll get the real offer in the case, or you'll get the dismissal that you're looking for. And so I'm not afraid to try a difficult case, even if that affects my record. Because as a prosecutor, I don't make decisions based upon what is good for Carli McNeill. I make decisions on what is good for our community and the safety of our community, even if that affects my trial record. And so, again, if you're looking at my experience, I have taken on the most serious cases, first-degree intentional homicide cases, including the notorious case of Mark Jensen, and also sexual assault cases. And if you look at my record, I've tried double-digit sexual assault cases and seen success in those cases as well.
All right, thank you. The second question is the position of district attorney includes the management of 19 deputy district attorneys or assistant district attorneys, the victim witness office, and support staff, totaling over 40 people. What leadership experience do you have that will enable you to manage such an office of that size?
Yeah, so the leadership experience there is pretty clear because I'm already doing that work. It is something that saying that you've worked in the DA's office for years and years, as I have, over 13 years, that helps you when you're trying to manage the office. Because a lot of what I spend my days doing is I'm taking phone calls or I'm talking to people about the problems or the obstacles that are in the way of my employees trying to do their job. And so a lot of these fixes are extremely technical, right? There's some hiccup in terms of getting defense attorneys pieces of discovery. Okay, how can I fix that if I don't know how the system works? And so that's why you want someone who becomes DA, who understands the inner workings of the office, because otherwise you can't fix problems if you don't know how the system works to begin with. And because I have that history within the DA's office, like I remember how the office looked when we had files, and I remember the transition to fileless, and now we're transitioning even more to try to not have discs and try to make everything digital. And we just learned that the state crime lab is trying to go electronic. And so again, this is something that you cannot fix these issues, you cannot manage the people if you don't know the people and if you don't know how the systems work. And so the best advertisement for me in this respect is I'm already doing that job.
Thank you. The next question that was submitted is, has any group affiliated with law enforcement endorsed you or your opponent? If so, who and why does it matter to the job as district attorney? Who has endorsed your opponent outside of law enforcement, and who endorsed you also outside of law enforcement as well?
So one of the things, running for district attorney, one of the things that I kind of find difficult is asking people for help or asking people for their support. But when it came to law enforcement, that was actually one of the easiest things for me, because I've worked with law enforcement for over 13 years. And so when I asked law enforcement, hey, are you willing to back me? Are you willing to be an endorser? I'm not just coming out of the blue and asking for their support. It's based upon the work I have done with them. And something I'm most proud of is that the law enforcement officers who support me the most are the ones that I've worked with the most. So I am endorsed by the board of the Kenosha Professional Police Association, by the Kenosha County Deputy Sheriff's Association, and by many individual law enforcement officers with decades and decades of experience. So it's not just associations, it's also individuals who have chosen to put their name out and endorse me. In terms of my opponent, I'm not aware of him having any endorsement from law enforcement groups. And it's not just law enforcement that supports me. I have community support. For instance, support from people who were crime victims. That's certainly not something I wanted to seek out, but when certain victims heard I was running for district attorney and reached out to me, I asked for their support. And so I have several victims or relatives of victims who are involved in the case who are willing to support me. And then also community members. Including the mayor of Kenosha, and then other community members that are friends and people who have seen my work. So one of the things I'm proud of is the widespread support I have.
Who has endorsed your opponent?
So I am not aware of any organizations that have endorsed him. And in terms of endorsements, all I'm aware of is a couple individual people.
The next submitted question is, what diversion programs does the DA's office currently have? How successful are they? And do you plan on continuing those or adding any others to the DA's office if elected, and why?
So at the DA's office, we really value our diversion programs because when I talk to people about this issue, most of the people, the vast majority of people that we prosecute are going to be released from jail. They're going to be released from prison. They're people who are going to rejoin the community, whether it's right away or whether it's a few years from now. And so the question is, who is this person as they rejoin the community? Have they been able to address their issues? And so that's why these programs are important, to connect people to treatment to address their needs. So for example, mental health treatment, that is a huge issue right now. And one of the diversion programs we have is a deferred prosecution agreement, where when the underlying issue causing the criminal behavior is clearly mental health related, which is usually evident right away at the beginning of the case, we have a program that person can participate in to keep them medicine compliant and get them back on their feet, because mental health was a driving force. And the same goes for drug abuse. So for those offenders who have been through the criminal justice system and who are on the way to prison, we have the treatment court. It is the last stop before someone goes to prison. Because of course there's a cost to prison. And again, the goal for someone who is abusing drugs and can't get away from the drug abuse is to have them get over that problem. And the drug treatment court has been extremely effective. You've probably seen reported in the news the graduations that occur from that court, because it's a happy story. That person was going to prison, we diverted them away from prison, they were extremely closely monitored, and they overcame the addiction. And that's something DA's offices should back and be behind. And so certainly if I become DA, I will continue to look for opportunities with those diversion programs.
For this next question, we're going to try to clean it up a little bit, and I'll ask it this way. The position of district attorney requires the elected DA to manage a large budget. Is there anything about your personal finances or that of your opponent that should give the public pause on their ability to do so?
Yeah, I mean, so talking about myself personally, the only thing I splurge on is my dog. So otherwise I would say the finances are pretty in line. But you know, this is important because it's taxpayer money. And the DA has to be smart about how we spend taxpayer money. And sometimes the expenses can be large. Like if we have a trial where we have to fly in witnesses and get that car for them from the airport and then put them in a hotel overnight. For example, I did the Jensen trial. So many witnesses were out of town. We had to spend a lot of money bringing those witnesses back in town. You have to be smart about that. Also expert witnesses. The DA has to be in control of that budget and make sure we're not going over budget on experts for the year. But also enabling your prosecutor, if they need an expert in their case, enabling your prosecutor to bring in that expert so you can keep the community safe by effectively prosecuting the case. So you have to manage that in terms of the budget as well as many other aspects of the budget. And so that's why it is, I think, a red flag that my opponent has been sued 3 times in the last 3 years. So he has been sued for not paying the bills. And so, you know, if this was a long ago thing, I think that would be one issue, but it's literally once the last 3 years, so 2024, 2023, and 2022. And, you know, it's unfortunate he's not here today because he could answer this question too. And he could explain why he should be trusted with taxpayer money when he couldn't be trusted to pay his own bills without a lawsuit. So I wish he was here to answer that question.
Do you have experience running a budget the size of the DA's office?
So I assist currently as the deputy DA in making these budgetary decisions. So many times our office manager or our attorneys will come to me about budget questions first. And if I can make the decision, great. If it goes up to the DA, then we'll talk together about how the decision should be made.
The phrases tough on crime and soft on crime are often used in campaigns, both for district attorney and for judicial positions. How do you believe these phrases intersect with your prosecutorial philosophy?
So I became a prosecutor because I wanted to do justice, and a lot of that is holding people accountable for the crimes they commit and not being afraid to do so. So as a prosecutor, I have dedicated my career to being quote unquote tough on crime. That's the decision I have made to be that kind of attorney. And I'm the kind of person who's pretty obsessed with my job, so I don't think for the last 13 years, I don't think certainly a day has not gone by, and maybe an hour hasn't gone by, where I haven't been thinking about my job and thinking about my cases, because I am from this place. And so I do want to make decisions to keep Kenosha County safe, because it's the place where I grew up and where I felt safe growing up. And so I think other people in this community now should feel the same way. When I read about crimes, oftentimes I might read about something happening near where I live or where I shop. So it means something to me. And so the thing I dislike about these phrases is that they can be tossed around and have no meaning. So what does it mean if my opponent, who's never been a prosecutor, what does it mean for him to say he's going to be tough on crime? I don't know. And I wish he was here today to answer that question for us. Because he says he will be tough on crime, but it's something that he has never done in his career. And the other thing I want to say about these phrases, they can be politicized. But when you look at the facts, you put aside narrative, you put aside preconceptions, and you look at the facts, the Kenosha DA's office in Kenosha County, last year, Kenosha County was #1 per capita in individuals being sent to prison. Right? So if you're questioning the current toughness of the Kenosha DA's office, we are part of a county that was #1 in that statistic.
One critique of DA's offices in general, not specifically the one in Kenosha, is that the charging decision can vary widely from assistant DA to assistant DA. How would you ensure that your office uses prosecutorial discretion uniformly, fairly, and equitably?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because it does matter who the prosecutor is looking at a case sometimes. And that's why we really invest in our training process. And so we have such a really good group of prosecutors, and it starts from the beginning, the moment a prosecutor walks into our office. We have people who are constantly consulting with each other on cases. And Mike and I, the DA and I, have an open door. And so when we're making these really important decisions on charges, to be fair, to be equitable, and to treat people equally, a lot of times it's about talking to each other. And if you're a younger or newer prosecutor to the office, it's about talking to people who have been there before. Then when you talk about the most serious cases that get charged, so generally that's sexual assaults, that's gun crimes, and that's homicides. Those decisions are made almost entirely by specialists, which we have fought for in the budget. We have fought for a sexual assault specialist, and we have fought for a gun crime specialist, because you don't want those cases, decisions to be made by inexperienced people. And so especially in those most serious cases, and in homicides obviously, those decisions are made by the most experienced prosecutors, and a lot of times by the prosecutor who's going to handle the case. So they got to put their money where their mouth is. When they're making that charging decision, it's going to be theirs to handle from beginning to end, many times. And so I think that helps ensure that it's not just random whether a person gets charged, that the charging decision is done with thought and with care and with the knowledge that we're going to back that decision.
What is your stance on the use of cash bail, and would you advocate for any changes to the current system?
So I'm not in favor of changing the current system. I think when you look at the criminal justice system, it's always balance that you're looking for. And a lot of times bail is the topic, but I think that people are missing the other half of that many times when they're discussing it. Because before the state imprisons someone, gives them that prison sentence or the consequences of a criminal conviction, we want to give that individual full process. An attorney, the right to challenge the case, someone to review the facts, and make sure if there's any motions to be filed, if there's any legal challenges to be made, that person has the fullest and fairest opportunity to challenge that, all the way up into including a trial. And so you have to balance all of those process rights with the protection of the community that happens if someone is held on bail and that person could be a bond risk, a risk to flee, or a risk to not abide by the bond conditions. And so that's why I support the bail statutes as they are right now, because I think we have to enact that balance. We are giving people every possible right, but we have to protect the public in the meanwhile and ensure that the accused person does appear for trial, which is an important feature of bond. And again, we have great professionals in Kenosha County who set these bonds and who make these decisions. Also, bond can be reviewed, and there's no limit on that. So if things change, if circumstances change, the judge can hear bond again, and the judge has the ability to change it. So I think that flexibility also makes that system fair.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit about your prosecutorial philosophy. Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota has all decriminalized marijuana for recreational use. Iowa has legalized marijuana, medical marijuana. As our county borders a state where recreational use of marijuana is legal, what is going to be your policy with respect to charging simple possession of THC?
So in that question, you talk about Minnesota and Illinois and these other states that have decriminalized marijuana. I'm running to be district attorney of Kenosha County, so it's not on me to decriminalize marijuana. And I think when people run for public office, the thing that I hate the most about the politicians is they promise you things they have no control over, or things that are outside of their authority. I don't think the DA should be making the law. That's not the DA's job. The DA should be enforcing the law given to the prosecutor by the state of Wisconsin. So that's the legislature and that's the governor. And so for people who just want to see legalized marijuana in the state of Wisconsin, I say talk to your state legislator. Talk to those people who are running, because they're running right now. And that's a good question for them. And then consider what the governor will do when you vote for governor. However, in terms of the enforcement of the marijuana statutes, we want to make sure we're making intelligent decisions because prosecutorial resources are limited. So we do not treat lower level crimes like the crime of the century, right? So a lower level crime like possession of marijuana is not going to be given nearly the same attention as the more serious crimes. We don't have a marijuana specialist in the office like we do for sexual assaults or for gun crimes, and that's for good reason. Because it's the nature and seriousness of the crime that we consider when allocating resources. And we do the same with driving cases. Those criminal cases that are related to not having a driver's license, it's not that we don't prosecute them, but we give them resources that are equal to the seriousness of the crime.
Just as a follow-up, then, I mean, if I'm understanding you right, your intention is to continue to charge simple possession as criminal offenses because it is a crime in Wisconsin. My understanding is that the DA's office also could have discretion to charge adultery because that's a crime in Wisconsin. So is it fair to say that your answer is that you will continue to charge them criminally, and do you plan on any sort of diversion programs for minor drug offenses?
Yeah, so what I would say is I will not categorically say the DA's office will not prosecute a law on the books, because I do think that is not the role of the DA's office or someone who is running for DA. But of course we can give tickets to people who possess marijuana, so not criminally charged, or we can criminally charge, and we do both. I just want to make clear that it's not for the DA to declare marijuana legal in a county. But again, if a ticket is appropriate, a fine is appropriate as an outcome, we're going to give a ticket. And I think there was a second part to that question. Oh, the diversion, yeah. So we do have a diversion program for people who possess marijuana. So I should have mentioned that when I was talking about our diversion options, but we already do have an option for people who wish to avoid that sort of consequence, a criminal consequence, particularly if they have a younger person or someone who maybe has a substance abuse issue. We do have a diversion option for those individuals that is already in existence.
One of the cases that Kenosha is known for lately is the Rittenhouse case. Did you charge it? Was it appropriately charged? And should DA Gravely or you have tried it, given the national attention in your position as the elected district attorney and the deputy district attorney?
So I am the person who charged the case. And the thing about being a prosecutor is that once the jury speaks, you have nothing more to say. And so I fully respect our jury system that we have in this country. I think it does preserve our freedom. And so I respect jury verdicts even in cases where I don't agree with them. So for this particular case, the thing that I think that the public should be thinking of when we move forward to the future is Kenosha had a terrible year in 2020. It was one of the most difficult years in the history of Kenosha. And I compare that to a person who you know, a friend, who had the worst year of their life. And all you want for that person is for them to overcome that year and come out stronger. And that's what I want for Kenosha. So I think the politics that drags us back to the past, that tries to relitigate 2020, I think we have to get past that. Because I can't go back in time and change things. And actually, when the Rittenhouse case was charged, I was not the deputy district attorney at that time. I became that in 2021. And so what I would say is, what we have to consider is how Kenosha is going to look in 2028, and not try to relitigate situations where everyone's made up their mind. I'm not going to change anyone's mind on that case. So I think the question is, has the DA's office made decisions in self-defense type cases that protect our community? And we have. I can name case after case after case where self-defense was at issue, and the DA's office made a decision to charge and that person was convicted. So I'll name some of the cases. Nathan Kibbe, I prosecuted that case. Raquel Vincent, he killed 3 people. Victor Ramos, he killed an individual in a road rage incident. So in the future, will the DA's office make decisions based upon self-defense that protect our community? We will.
Since the time went up before I think you got to answer the rest of it, the second half of the question was, should District Attorney Gravely or you have tried it, given the national attention in your position as the district attorney or the deputy district attorney at the time of the trial?
So the thing about our office is that we have a lot of talented prosecutors that I fully trust to try the most difficult cases. And because the Rittenhouse case came right on the heels of Jacob Blake, and the DA had to make that decision in the Jacob Blake shooting. The DA had to make that call. And the amount of work and effort that went into making an intelligent, informed decision that was explained to the public was enormous. And again, I wasn't the deputy DA at the time, but I was helping behind the scenes every step of the way on that. And so someone else had to work on the Rittenhouse case at the same time. You don't prepare a trial in the weeks ahead of time. There has to be an owner for that trial from the beginning. And so I think it would be disrespectful to attorneys to make them carry the load on a case and then swoop in and take it away from them. And also, we trusted the attorneys in our office. So I think that the DA made the appropriate call to focus on the case that the DA had to make the decision on and had to explain to the public.
Closely related, if you are elected as district attorney, do you intend to try the high-profile cases in Kenosha?
I do, and I think I showed that because part of becoming deputy DA in Kenosha is you had to follow in the shoes of Angelina Gabrielle. And one of the things that Angelina Gabrielle did was prosecute the Jensen case. And we knew almost certainly that that case was coming back and would have to be retried. So I knew when I became the deputy DA what I would be inheriting there. And I was not afraid to take on that case. It was a tremendous amount of work. It required catching up on decades of history in terms of the facts. I was very blessed that Attorney Bob Jamboys came back to try that case as well. But I was the person who gave the opening and the closing argument in that case. So if the people of Kenosha are wondering if I'm willing to take on a tough, high-profile case, I invite them to go to YouTube and watch me do it.
All right, thank you. Your opponent or his proxies have been critical of the DA's office's decision to refer a recent cold case involving an infant to the Racine DA's office. If you're able to talk about what was the conflict and more broadly, what ethical standards will govern your decision to refer charges to another DA's office?
Yeah, so the ethical conflict did involve an attorney who was a prosecutor in our office, so it was a very close ethical conflict. And I don't think anyone who's aware of the nature of the conflict disagrees that it was, in fact, a conflict. And it's unfortunate that it did occur where we had a conflict on a serious case. But I'll also say that probably the most serious case in Racine, at least in recent history, the last decade or since I've been a prosecutor, is one of their off-duty officers, John Hetland, was murdered. And they had a conflict in that case, and they sent it to us. So it's not true that DA's offices send conflict cases away to be buried. Racine could not have cared more about that case that they sent to us. They had to send it because it was a conflict. We care about the cases, even the ones we have to send away. Again, it wasn't put away in a drawer, it was sent to another DA's office, another professional office to make a decision. And so the conflict laws, as I'm addressing the attorneys in the room, right? The most significant, the most complicated, but the most serious ethical rules often involve conflicts of interest. And so that's what we're talking about when the DA's office has to send a case away. And so for my opponent to suggest that he will not recuse himself from cases where he has a conflict of interest is for him to announce that he's going to be unethical. And again, I wish he was here to explain that decision and try to explain it to a group of lawyers who I think will struggle to understand. And in fact, my opponent has moved to remove himself from case after case after case since running for DA because of ethics. So I know that he does follow the ethical rules of conflict. He has gotten off of cases since running for DA. So he's using this issue, exploiting a tragedy to try to gain political points. And again, I wish he was here to explain himself.
One of the anonymous questions that was submitted, I'll just read it or quote it, and I'll ask you to comment on it. It's, quote, "Will you continue to offer separate plea bargains to illegal aliens than to U.S. citizens like the traffic program currently running in Kenosha?" So I guess my attempt at a question in response to the question that was submitted is this. Can you explain the program, talk about the assumptions underlying the question, and whether it will continue under your leadership?
Yeah, the assumptions underlying the question are false. And it's being spread by someone who is committed to spreading false information as it relates to this district attorney race. And that person is tied at the hip to my opponent, who is afraid to appear today and answer the same questions of this nature. But I will answer this question because this program is not a special program for illegal immigrants. It is actually a less extensive diversion program than what is offered for people who live here, are born here, are able to get a license. Because every single person in Kenosha County who is facing a charge for operating after their license is revoked or no DL second plus, every single person is given a diversion option. Because what we want is compliance. We want these individuals, if you can get your license, get your license. And then there's no need for further criminal intervention. For people who cannot get their license, this program that's being referred to, this program teaches those individuals other options than driving. And if they continue to reoffend, they're criminally prosecuted. So the origins of this program are actually about saving taxpayer money. One of the most conservative judges in Kenosha County, Judge Schrader, was frustrated by seeing these cases in his court and saying, I'm just going to give a fine here. Why do we have an interpreter here? Why is there a defense attorney? Why are we having hearing after hearing after hearing, wasting the public's money? And so by offering this diversion option, we save that money on interpreters. We save the court's time. And so that's why a conservative judge like Judge Schrader can get behind it, because it's really about the good, intelligent administration of the court system. And again, only someone committed to twisting the facts and spreading untruths to the public would declare that it's anything but that.
All right, thank you. Just have a few more questions here, and we're moving through it pretty quickly. So one of the questions we received, I'm trying to combine these. We received two questions that were pretty similar, along similar lines here, and I'll try to combine them as best as I can. It related to the allegation of bullying of the assistant district attorneys, both internally and externally, from either other attorneys or judges. Do you believe that there is an issue that needs to be addressed in the DA's office And if so, how do you intend to train and support the assistant district attorneys that you manage?
So I'm not familiar with any bullying. I'm looking over, shaking heads. Okay, so I'm not really aware of
It was a
any-
submitted question, so I'll throw that out there. I'll let the table to my right talk to you afterwards, I guess.
Yeah, I think they can stand up for themselves. And again, I think we have great relationships in Kenosha County. I think that obviously we're adversaries in the courtroom, but in terms of working together and being respectful of each other, I think the judges and the defense attorneys and the prosecutor's office and all the people who assist us in doing our jobs, I think we're committed to being collegial and respectful of each other as we do our work.
A few of the other questions, and I just have a few more here. One of the questions that was submitted, I'll try to put it together as best as I can, but is there anything about your campaign's financial disclosures or the support that you've received, or that of your opponent, that you believe is relevant to the office that you both seek?
Well, I think it's a good thing that people who are running for office do need to publicly disclose where they're getting their money from. I've certainly invested a lot of my own money in this race because this is the job that I love and I want to keep doing it in the place that I'm from. And I do think it's very appropriate. The public can scrutinize those filed reports, see if they are accurate, see if they match what the public is seeing in terms of advertising that is happening. And so I have no complaint about that system. And I certainly think that just like I'm standing here today answering questions, I think public scrutiny of those filed reports is appropriate to make sure that there's no hidden money trying to influence these elections.
All right, well, my last question before we do the closing remarks is, what differentiates you from your opponent, and what does your opponent do well?
So I think the biggest difference is that my opponent is running to be the top prosecutor in the county, and he's never prosecuted a case in his career. And someone can run with that history, but I think they should be honest with the public about it. But I don't think he has been. So if you look at what he presents publicly, he says he stands with law enforcement. But what he really means is he stands near law enforcement. Because in this election, law enforcement stands with me. These are the people that I've worked with. These are the people who I've earned their trust. And he does not have any law enforcement endorsements from any law enforcement groups. And so again, what do those words mean, that you stand with law enforcement? I wish he was here today to tell us. He also says that he wants to support victims or fight for victims. He's a defense attorney. It has been his job to try to undermine the credibility, the believability of victims. And this is not to slam defense attorneys. They have a critical role in the criminal justice system. But if you're running for DA as a defense attorney, then you really can't say, having never been a prosecutor, that you fight for victims. And then, in terms of the other claims that he has made in connection with this election, I think he has made false statements. And I really think the reason he's not here today is because his campaign is based, the foundation of his campaign is false. And there is not truth behind it, and I would call him out on those false statements. He's criticized the DA's office for not prosecuting rioters, when we have. And he knows we have, because he was a defense attorney for a rioter, someone who went to prison. That's fundamentally dishonest. So the only thing that I can say he does well is misrepresent the facts and not allow himself to be called out on it.
These are all the questions that we have today. All right, I'll give you 5 minutes for closing remarks.
Oh, I think there's a question.
Is there a question?
Yeah, I have a question.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. Kenosha became famous. I can speak loud enough. Kenosha became famous with the Jacob Blake shooting, the Rittenhouse trial, and the mistaken identity beatdown in Applebee's here in Kenosha. So in your current role as a deputy DA and in any volunteer roles in the community, what have you done to address racial disparities in Kenosha, and what will you do as DA to address those issues?
So I have tried to partner with community organizations that wish to address these underlying issues. And so a lot of that, when we talk about the DA's role, a lot of that relates to rehabilitation. So we have encouraged programs such as, I just was reading in the Kenosha News the other day about the Kenosha Racine Vocational Ministry. One of the things that they do is, and someone that I spoke to quite frequently was Jim Schatzman, who runs that and who's on the verge of retirement. They focus on the highest risk offenders who are being released from the prison system and helping them re-enter our community. And our jail is actually doing a fantastic job working on re-entry because re-entry is such a prison issue, but it also applies to the jail. And so as a member of the DA's office, I've always tried to be someone who's part of the solution with these community programs that are offered. And that is certainly something that I will strive to continue to do in the future. Because again, these tensions, these issues, I think they lead to a less safe community. And I think it's the role of the DA to try to overcome that. And I think we've seen those efforts with the police departments as well, how they're trying to connect to the public, they're going to events, they're reaching out to people so that people have another viewpoint of the police. And I would say, look at the contrast then with my opponent, who was made chair of the Racial and Ethnic Equity Commission, an effort by the county board to heal the wounds from 2020. He drove that commission into the ground. In less than 9 months under his leadership, that commission ceased to exist. And I think he has something to answer for there. But once again, he's not here to answer that. And he's not here to tell us how he will not let that failure of leadership damage the DA's office also in the future.
All right, we'll give 5 minutes for closing remarks unless there's any other questions from the members of the public. The lawyers have all had the opportunity to submit questions, and so if members of the public who weren't privy to that option have any questions, otherwise you can go ahead with your closing remarks.
So what I'm asking people to do when making a decision in this election is I'm asking people to put aside politics, to put aside names, and just compare our resumes, the resumes of the two candidates running for the job of district attorney side by side. Because I think if you do that, there's absolutely no question that you would choose me as your next DA. Because again, my opponent has not prosecuted a case. If he at any point wanted to be a prosecutor, there have been prosecutor jobs open across the state for years. And so, to me, it's disingenuous to only run for the top job. If you want to be a prosecutor, be a prosecutor. And then try to earn your way into the position of district attorney. And so I am asking people, again, put aside preconceived notions and look at this election as you would picking any other professional in your life. Look at it as if you were picking your doctor. Because if you're picking a doctor to care for you, you're going to put your health in their hands. You would never ask that person, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? You simply want the most experienced, the most capable person to do the job. And so that's why I want to say, just put all of the noise aside and pick the person who is most capable of doing this job and doing this work. And that's why my history versus his history matters. Frankly, if I had his resume, I would not dare run for DA. And that's why there's really no substance to his campaign. You know, that's why I continue to say I wish he was here, because I want him to tell me what he means by tough on crime, by saying he's going to be tough on crime. What does that mean to him? Where is the substance to that statement? When saying he stands with law enforcement, where is the substance to that statement? Or fighting for victims? How about this? How about the trashing of the DA's office? You're running to be head of this office, and you're running by trashing it. What will you do when people leave? Because I can tell you, when there's open DA positions, you might get 0 applicants. The job market is that difficult. So if you run by trashing the DA's office, how are you going to run that office when the people you need to run it are gone? Also, one of the first things I announced when running for DA is who was going to be my deputy DA, because that person has an important management job in the office. And I picked that person, a very experienced prosecutor who's able to do the job, and I have not yet heard who my opponent would have as deputy DA, although I've heard he's asked quite a few people who have declined. So again, who will actually run the office if you are trying to take a leadership position, try to be head of an office when you have no experience, and when you have to be concerned because you've been trashing the people who work there, you have to be concerned that those positions will be vacant. And so again, put politics aside, put aside preconceived notions, and pick the best person to be your next DA, the same as you would for any other professional in your life. And so if you need more information, talk to someone you know who works in the courthouse. Talk to a law enforcement officer you know. Talk to someone who's recently retired from one of those positions. And just ask them, friend to friend, who should be the next DA. And if you don't know any people like that, go on YouTube and watch me try the Mark Jensen case, and then go on YouTube and watch him chair the Racial and Ethnic Equity Commission, because I think that will also make your decision for you.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you very much. Give her another round of applause. I do want to thank everybody for coming out here today. I do wish we would have had both candidates to hear from both of them to get their visions, but I'm glad that we were able to vet at least one of them and submit the questions. So thank you all who have submitted your questions. They were detailed and they took a little bit of time to put together, but I'm glad that we were able to vet at least Deputy District Attorney McNeill's vision for the office. And so a few announcements again. We announced it earlier, October 31st, we have an ethics presentation from Tim Pierce. And so if you're a member of the Bar Association, come get your ethics credit. We'll serve lunch as well. And then follow, if you don't get the listserv, if you're not on the listserv, please email David Hughes or myself, and we'll get you on the listserv, because we are going to be announcing Judge Schrader's portrait unveiling once we get a date nailed down. And so that will be coming up. He was, at least at one time, I believe, the longest serving circuit court judge in state history, or maybe Tammy, of all time, or just, or at least at any given time. At the time he was serving, he was the longest serving judge. So I think it would be great to honor him and see his portrait unveiled. So keep an eye out. We'll get that. And I see Tammy tearing up a little bit now. Well, we're excited about that event. And then again, if you do want to get involved in the Bar Association, we would welcome your help and attention. We'd love to have you out. We are always looking for new people to join. So come on out and join us. So see you on Thursday, or next Thursday, at the Ethics CLE, and then hopefully at Judge Schrader's unveiling sometime in November or December. Thank you.